My brother called me on a Tuesday night, 3 days before Thanksgiving, and the first thing he said wasn't, "Hey," or "How are you," or even my name. It was, "Mom needs you to bring an extra $300 for the turkey." I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking garage, still in my scrubs, eating a granola bar for dinner because I'd worked a 12-hour shift and hadn't had time to think about actual food. I remember looking at the concrete pillar in front of me, the paint peeling off in long strips, and I thought, I'm 31 years old, and I'm eating a granola bar in a parking garage, and my brother is calling me about turkey money. "Tell Mom I'll be there Thursday," I said, "and I'm bringing wine, not cash." He laughed like I'd made a joke. I hadn't. My name is Nora, and for about 4 years, I was my family's personal bank. Not because I was rich. I was a registered nurse at a regional hospital in Ohio, making decent money for my age but nothing extraordinary. I drove a 2019 Honda Civic with a dent in the back bumper. I brought my lunch to work in a reusable bag from Target. I had a one-bedroom apartment that I'd slowly made into something that felt like mine, with a second-hand couch I'd reupholstered myself over 2 weekends and a windowsill full of plants that were somehow all still alive. But compared to the rest of my family, I was apparently swimming in money. It started small, 100 here, 200 there. My mom had been between jobs twice in 3 years. My dad's contracting business had slowed down after he threw out his back. My brother, 27, no degree, working at a tire shop, had a girlfriend, then a baby on the way, then rent he couldn't cover. Every few months there was a new emergency. And every few months, I was the one who got the call. By the time that Thanksgiving rolled around, I had quietly sent home somewhere around $9,000 over 4 years. I know that because I finally sat down one night in October and went through my bank statements, writing it all down in a spiral notebook. $9,240. Not loans, I'd never been paid back a cent. Not gifts with any gratitude attached. Just transfers, Venmo payments, cash and birthday cards that were never acknowledged. And now my brother was calling me about turkey money 3 days before I was supposed to drive 4 hours home. I said yes. I always said yes. That's the part I hate most when I look back. Not what they did, what I kept doing. Thanksgiving was on a Thursday, obviously, but my mom had asked me to come Wednesday evening so I could help get things ready. I'd learned over the years that this meant arrive early, do most of the cooking, and be there to absorb whatever chaos had accumulated since my last visit. I packed a bag, loaded my car, stopped at a Trader Joe's on the way out of Columbus, and spent $60 on wine, a pie, a bag of fancy dinner rolls, and flowers for the table because I am, apparently, constitutionally incapable of arriving empty-handed. I pulled into my parents' driveway around 7:30. The porch light was on. My dad's truck was parked crooked in the yard, the way he always parked it, and there was a new dent in the garage door that hadn't been there in August. My mom opened the front door before I even got my bag out of the trunk. "Oh, good, you're here," she said. "Did you bring the cash for the turkey?" Not, "Hi." Not, "How was the drive?" Not, "You look tired, come inside." Just, "Did you bring the money?" I stood there in the cold with a pie in one hand and flowers in the other, and I said, "Hi, Mom. I'm good. Drive was fine. Thanks for asking." She waved her hand like I was being dramatic and held the door open. I went inside. The house smelled like cigarettes and the lavender plug-in she used to cover the cigarettes. The TV in the living room was loud. My dad was on the couch watching a football game and he raised a hand at me without looking up. My brother was at the kitchen table with his girlfriend Amber, who was 8 months pregnant and somehow still vaping on the back porch, which I will just leave there, and they both glanced at me and went back to their phones. "Nora, can you start the potatoes?" My mom called from the hallway. "I've got a headache." I put the flowers in a mason jar, put the wine in the fridge, put the pie on the counter, washed my hands, and started on the potatoes. I told myself, it's fine, it's just one holiday, you can do this. Dinner wasn't until Thursday, so Wednesday night was supposed to be casual, frozen pizza, some wine, maybe a family movie. What it actually was, my mom complaining about the neighbors for 45 minutes, my brother asking me if I could spot him $60 for gas and diapers, and my dad mentioning 3 separate times, that the furnace had been making a noise and repairs were probably going to run about 1500. I drank 2 glasses of wine and went to bed at 10. The guest room, my old room, had a new problem every time I visited. This time it was a window that wouldn't close all the way and a space heater that smelled like burning dust. I lay there under 2 quilts, listening to the wind, thinking about my apartment in Columbus, my plants, my reupholstered couch, the quiet. I thought about the $9,000. I fell asleep eventually. Thanksgiving morning was actually okay for a few hours. I got up early, made coffee, and had about 45 minutes of silence before anyone else was awake. I prepped the green bean casserole, started the turkey, set the table. It was the part of the holiday I'd always liked. The kitchen in the early morning, the smell of onions and butter, the feeling of doing something useful with my hands. By noon the house was full. My aunt and uncle came, which was fine. A family friend my parents had invited, which was also fine. And then my cousin Derek showed up, which was not fine because Derek is 42 years old and has owed my father money since 2019 and never once offered to bring anything to a gathering except his opinions. But I smiled. I poured the wine. I helped carry dishes to the table. Dinner was good. That part I'll give them. When my family sits down to eat together, there's maybe an hour where everyone is genuinely warm and funny, and the history of grievances sort of melts back. My dad told a story about a job he'd done in the 90s that had everyone laughing. My aunt talked about a trip she and my uncle were planning. The food was good because I'd cooked most of it and I'm a decent cook. It was after dinner that things shifted. My mom and I were in the kitchen doing dishes while the men watched football and Amber sat on the couch scrolling her phone. It was quiet except for the water running, and I was thinking about nothing in particular when my mom said, without looking up from the pan she was scrubbing, "Your father talked to a bankruptcy attorney last month." I stopped drying. What? We're behind on the second mortgage. She said it the same way she'd say we're out of dish soap. Have been for about 8 months. The attorney said if we can't catch up by February, we're looking at foreclosure. I stood there with a dish towel in my hand. Mom, why didn't you tell me? I'm telling you now. How much is behind? She named a number. It was $11,000. The kitchen was quiet except for the TV in the other room and the sound of my father laughing at something. Laughing. In the living room, while my mother stood at the sink telling me they were 8 months behind on their mortgage. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I was running numbers in my head, which is a horrible thing to be doing on Thanksgiving, but I couldn't help it. I had about $14,000 in savings. I'd been building it slowly for 2.5 years. It was supposed to be my emergency fund, a down payment someday, my safety net. I need to think about it, I said. My mom nodded like that was the expected answer, like she'd already counted it as yes. I didn't sleep Thursday night either. I lay in that cold guest room and I thought about my savings account and I thought about the $9,000 and I thought about all the times I'd said yes. The car payment I'd covered for 3 months when my dad's business was slow. The ER bill I'd paid for my brother when he didn't have insurance. The time my mom called me crying at midnight because the electric was going to be shut off. And I transferred $200 from my phone before I was even fully awake. Every time I told myself it was temporary. Every time I told myself things would stabilize. Every time things did not stabilize. I thought about something my therapist had said to me. Yes, I have a therapist, I'm a nurse. We all have therapists. She'd said, helping someone at the cost of your own stability isn't generosity. It's just a slower version of drowning together. At 2 in the morning I got up, sat at the little desk in the corner of my old room, and opened my banking app. I looked at my savings balance for a long time. Then I opened my notes app and I started writing down every transfer, every payment, every time I'd sent money home in the last 4 years. It took me almost an hour. When I was done, I had a list that came to $9,240. I stared at it, and something in me just stalked. Not dramatically, not with any big declaration or moment of clarity. It was quieter than that. It was like a machine that had been running so long you forgot it was making noise, and then it simply turned off, and suddenly you could hear the silence. I was not going to give them $11,000. I didn't know yet how I was going to say that, but I knew it was true. Friday morning, I came downstairs and my dad was already at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen. He had numbers written on it. He looked up when I walked in, and there was something careful in his expression. Not guilty exactly, more like someone who has rehearsed what they're about to say. "Sit down, Nora. Let's talk about the house." I poured myself coffee. I sat down. He had a whole presentation, the numbers on the legal pad, the timeline, what the attorney had said, what would happen if they lost the house, where they'd go. My brother came in halfway through and leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, nodding along, which irritated me in a way I couldn't fully articulate. When my dad finished, he looked at me across the table. "We need your help," he said. "Family helps family, you know that." I held my coffee cup in both hands. "I know," I said, "and I've been helping for 4 years." A small pause. "What do you mean?" my mom said from the doorway. I hadn't heard her come in. "I mean, I sent home $9,000 since 2020. I went through my statements last night." I said it evenly, not angry, just factual. Car payments, electric bills, Marcus's ER visit, the water heater 2 summers ago, the thing with Derek's loan that I was never supposed to mention, $9,000. The kitchen was very quiet. My brother pushed off the counter. That was different, that was. "It was money I didn't have to give," I said. "I gave it because I love this family, but it was still $9,000, and I didn't get a thank you card for any of it, let alone pay back." My dad's jaw tightened. "We didn't ask you to keep a ledger, Nora." "No, you just kept asking." My mom made a sound. She looked like she was about to cry, and I knew from experience that her crying would make me cave, so I looked at the wall just past her shoulder instead. "I can't give you $11,000, I said. "I'm sorry. I want to help you, I do, but not like this. Not all at once, not for my emergency savings, not with no plan for what happens next time there's a crisis." The silence that followed was different from the quiet of the early morning kitchen. This one had weight to it. My dad said, "So you're just going to let us lose the house?" Not a question, a statement, an indictment. "I'm not letting you do anything," I said. "You've been behind for 8 months. That didn't happen because of me." My brother said something under his breath that I decided not to hear. I finished my coffee. I stood up. I said, "I love you guys. I'm going to drive home today. If you want to talk about a realistic plan, not just a number you need from me, I'm here for that conversation." I went upstairs and packed my bag. Nobody tried to stop me from leaving. That was the part I kept turning over in my mind on the drive back to Columbus. The 4 hours of flat Ohio highway, gray November sky, the radio on low. Nobody came to the door while I was packing. Nobody called out when I carried my bag downstairs. My mom was in the living room and she didn't look at me. My dad had gone outside. My brother was gone entirely. I said goodbye. My mom said, "Drive safe," in a voice like a door closing. I cried for about 20 minutes once I got on the interstate, and then I put on a podcast about true crime and stopped. I didn't hear from them for almost 2 weeks. Then my mom texted me a screenshot of a past due notice, no message attached, just the screenshot. I stared at it for a while. Then I put my phone face down on my coffee table and watched 2 episodes of a show I'd been meaning to catch up on. The next day she sent another one, this time with, "Just so you know what we're dealing with." I texted back, "I understand it's serious. I meant what I said about talking through a plan." She didn't respond. My brother called 4 days later. I could tell immediately from his voice that it was a strategic call. He'd been prepped, or he'd prepped himself, and he was doing the reasonable, calm, older sibling routine, which might have worked better if he hadn't spent most of our childhood borrowing my things and never returning them. He said he was worried about mom and dad. He said the holidays were hard enough without family drama. He said, and this is the part where I had to hold the phone away from my ear for a second, he said he thought I was being a little selfish. "I'm selfish," I said. "I just mean, you've got a good job, you're stable, and they really need Marcus." I said it quietly. "You have a baby coming in 6 weeks. You work full-time. Have you offered to help Mom and Dad? Silence. I'm not in a position. Neither am I said. Not for $11,000. That's my whole safety net. That's my emergency fund. What happens to me if I give that away and something goes wrong? More silence. It's family, he said, finally, like that was the answer to everything. I know it's family, I said. I've been acting like it's family for 4 years. I need you guys to act like it too. I ended the call. I sat very still on my couch for a while. My cat, an orange tabby named Fig, came and stepped on my legs and then settled heavily on my stomach, the way he did when he could tell I was upset, or possibly just when he was hungry. Probably hungry. Yeah, I told him. Me too. December was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. No calls, no texts, no checking in. My mom posted a photo on Facebook of the kitchen decorated for Christmas, and I was not in any of the decorations. Not unusual, but I noticed. My brother sent a group text asking about Christmas plans and then didn't respond when I replied. I started to wonder if they were organizing something, if there was going to be a summit, a family friend who'd been recruited to mediate. An apology wrapped around another ask. What I didn't expect was for my dad to show up at my apartment. It was a Saturday morning, the second week of December, and I was in my pajamas eating toast and reading the news on my tablet when the buzzer rang. I looked at the intercom screen and saw my dad standing outside in his Carhartt jacket, hands in his pockets, breath visible in the cold. I buzzed him in. He came upstairs and stood in my doorway and looked around my apartment for a moment. The plants, the reupholstered couch, the bookshelf I built from a kit, and something moved across his face that I couldn't quite read. He'd only been here twice before. You want coffee? I said. Sure. We sat at my kitchen table and he held his mug, and for a while neither of us said anything. My dad is not a man who apologizes easily. He grew up in a family where money was always tight and pride was the currency everyone could afford, and those things shaped him in ways I understand better now than I did at 20. Finally, he said, your mother and I, we handled this wrong. The way we came to you about the mortgage, that wasn't right. I waited. It's been a lot, Nora. With the business slowing down and the bills and he stopped, set down his mug. We got into a habit of looking to you to fix things, and I don't think we said thank you, not the way we should have. I looked at the table. No, I said, you didn't. He nodded like that was fair. I'm not asking you for the money, he said. I'm asking if we can come back from this. As a family, I don't want to lose my daughter over a mortgage. I looked at him for a long time. At the lines around his eyes and the gray in his hair and the way his hands looked rough from decades of work. He was my dad. I loved him. That had never been the complicated part. I'm still here, I said. I'm not the one who went quiet. Something in his expression shifted. Not guilt, exactly. More like recognition. We're talking to the bank, he said. Looking at a modification. Your mother is going back to work in January. They need people at the school. She applied for a paraprofessional position. He paused. We're trying to figure it out ourselves, the way we probably should have been doing. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not completely, not all at once, but something. That's good, I said. That's really good, Dad. He stayed for about an hour. We talked about things that had nothing to do with money. His old jobs, my work at the hospital, a memory from when I was 10, and we built a birdhouse together that turned out completely lopsided and attracted exactly one bird, ever. He laughed at that. I laughed too. When he left, he stood in the doorway and looked at me and said, your mother, she'll come around, she just needs time. I know, I said. He nodded, went down the stairs. I stood at my window and watched his truck pull out of the parking lot, and I thought, maybe, not fixed, not the same, not back to the easy thing it never quite was. But maybe something different, something that had been renegotiated quietly over a kitchen table and 2 cups of coffee on a December morning. Christmas was different. I drove home, not 4 hours, not the same house. They'd found a buyer for the mortgage situation. Worked something out I didn't fully understand, but that meant they weren't losing the house. My mom got the school job. My dad landed 2 contracts in November that kept the business running through winter. None of that was because of my $11,000. It happened without it. I brought wine and a pie again. My mom hugged me at the door, actually hugged me, held on for a second, and said, "I'm glad you're here." Not "Did you bring the cash?" Just, "I'm glad you're here." My brother was there with Amber and the new baby, a boy they'd named Connor, who was 6 weeks old and extremely loud and had very strong opinions about everything, which seemed about right for someone related to us. I held him for a while after dinner and he grabbed my finger with his whole fist and stared at me with enormous serious eyes. "He likes you," Marcus said. "Don't start," I said, but I was smiling. We watched football after dinner, actually watched it together, all of us, and my dad explained something about the play that I still don't fully understand, but nodded along to anyway. My mom fell asleep on the couch about halfway through the fourth quarter and nobody woke her up. I drove home the next morning. The sky was pale and clear and the highway was empty in that specific way it gets between Christmas and New Year's, the world sort of pausing, catching its breath. I thought about the $9,240. I thought about the $11,000 I'd kept. I thought about my therapist's voice saying it's not generosity, it's just a slower version of drowning together. I was still here, still upright, still moving. That felt, for the first time in a long time, like enough. I think about that Tuesday night phone call more than I probably should. My brother's voice so casual, so certain I would say yes. And the worst part is, he wasn't wrong to be certain, he'd learned it. I taught him, one transfer at a time, that I was someone who absorbed the cost of other people's choices without making a sound. What I didn't understand for a long time is that kindness without honesty isn't actually kindness. It's just a comfortable arrangement for everyone except you. Every time I sent money without saying anything, I told my family something untrue. That this was fine, that I had no limits, that love meant making yourself smaller so other people didn't have to feel uncomfortable. That's not a moral position. That's just fear dressed up as generosity. The night I sat at that little desk in my childhood bedroom and wrote out every dollar, 9,240, something changed in me that I don't think I can fully explain. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like finally seeing the shape of something clearly that I'd been looking at sideways for years. I'd been telling myself I was helping. But helping implies the other person is moving towards something. What I was actually doing was funding a standstill and calling it love because it hurt to admit otherwise. It took real clarity to look at that number and not flinch away from what it meant. Not just the money, the pattern, the years of midnight transfers, the bills I paid that nobody thanked me for, the way I learned to shrink my needs down so small they barely made a sound. Seeing it clearly, writing it down, sitting with the discomfort of knowing that was the hardest thing I did. Not the conversation in the kitchen. Not watching my dad's jaw tighten. The hardest thing was doing it alone in the cold, at 2 a.m, and not talking myself back into yes. And then there was the matter of staying up right after, driving 4 hours home alone, not answering the screenshot, listening to my brother tell me I was selfish and not crumbling, not apologizing, not sending money the next day to make the tension go away. That took something I didn't know I had in me. I'd spent so long being the one who smoothed things over that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just let something be hard, to let people be disappointed in me and survive it. What I know now, and what Nora, sitting in that parking garage eating a granola bar, did not yet know, is that the moment you stop absorbing someone else's consequences, you give them back the chance to rise to their own life. My dad found contracts. My mom got a job. They worked it out. Not because I stopped caring, but because I stopped making it unnecessary for them to try. That's the thing nobody tells you. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do for someone you love is refuse to make their problem disappear. Not because you don't care, but because you do. I still have my savings account. I still have my plants and my reupholstered couch and my orange cat named Fig who steps on me when he's hungry. I still drive the Civic with the dent in the bumper. And I still have my family, different now, a little more honest, a little more careful with each other. That feels like something worth keeping.